The BMW M3 F80. For some, it's the ultimate driving machine. For others, it's a twin-turbocharged beast that demands respect or it will bite back. We've all seen it happen. A driver gets a little too confident with the throttle, the rear end kicks out, and in a split second, German engineering meets a concrete barrier. That's exactly how this story begins. This isn't just a standard M3, this is a machine that was pushed beyond its limits, and the aftermath is enough to make any car enthusiast wince. But where most people see a total loss, we see a diamond in the rough. The question isn't just whether this car can be saved, it's whether it should be. When this 2015 Marina blue M3 rolled off the trailer, the damage looked catastrophic. The front right side had taken the brunt of a high-speed impact with a roadside barrier. The rim shattered, the suspension non-existent. But as we dug deeper, we realized this wasn't your average factory build. Underneath the crumpled hood lay a secret that changed the stakes of the entire project. This car had been touched by SR performance. We're talking about a modified intercooler, upgraded charge pipes, and most importantly, a crank hub modification. For anyone who knows the S55 engine, the crank hub is the Achilles heel. If it slips, the engine is toast. The fact that the previous owner invested in this safety mod meant this car was built to be driven hard, and it likely had the software to match. But the modifications were a double-edged sword. While the high-end parts were intact, the impact had turned the air intake system into a weapon. One of the air filters had been pulverized into tiny plastic shards. This is a nightmare scenario for a turbocharged engine. If even a single piece of that plastic found its way into the turbo impellers, we'd be looking at a full engine teardown before we even started the bodywork. We were standing on a razor's edge. Either we had a high-performance bargain, or we had a very expensive pile of blue scrap metal. Before we could even think about the engine, we had to address the structural integrity. A car that can hit 155 miles per hour needs to be perfectly straight, and right now, this BMW was anything but. The initial assessment was grim. The right front suspension had been ripped away with such force that the shock absorber had literally punched out of its housing, detaching itself from the chassis. This wasn't just a matter of bolting on new parts, the very bones of the car were twisted. As we stripped away the mangled remains of the bumper, fender, and hood, a miracle was revealed. The impact had stopped just millimeters away from the timing chain cover. There was a tiny crack in the valve cover, a silent witness to how close this engine came to total annihilation. But the S55 lived to fight another day. However, the good luck ended there. The right side chassis rail, the main structural beam of the front end, was bent like a piece of wet cardboard. Many of the electrical wires were severed, dangling like useless nerves. To get the precision we needed, we made a radical decision. The engine had to come out. There is no room for close enough when you're dealing with an M-series chassis. By clearing the engine bay, we gained the space to see the true extent of the damage to the cooling pipes in the radiator support. Surprisingly, the oil cooler was bent but held its pressure, a testament to the build quality. But we weren't taking any risks. A used cooler for $200 was a small price to pay for peace of mind. To fix a modern BMW, you usually need a state-of-the-art chassis jig costing tens of thousands of dollars. We had something a bit different. We pulled out an old-school chassis straightening machine that had been sitting in the weeds, covered in rust. Why? Because sometimes the old ways are the best. This machine had two massive tensioning towers that could pull with enough force to rearrange the molecules of the steel. But there was a problem. The machine was powered by ancient air pumps that were slow, jerky, and prone to jamming. In the spirit of a true rebuild, we didn't just fix the car, we fixed the machine. We spent hours sanding down the rust until the metal gleamed, and then we performed a transplant of our own, converting the air system to electric over hydraulic. Now we had the speed and the raw power to handle the BMW's high-strength steel. But power is nothing without control. We discovered the towers were sticking because the internal bearings were seized with dried-out grease. A quick teardown and fresh lubrication, and later we had a tool that moved with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. The real challenge was securing the BMW to the frame. You can't just throw a chain around a car like this and start pulling. If the car moves even a fraction of a millimeter during the tensioning process, the alignment is ruined forever. We had to get creative. We fabricated custom iron adapters designed to fit into the original BMW lifting points, the strongest part of the entire chassis. By welding these bases and locking them into the machine's clamps, we ensured the car was an immovable object. Only then did the big pull begin. With the hydraulic pistons groaning under the pressure, we began the slow, agonizing process of pulling the inner fender and the shock tower back into their factory coordinates. It was a game of inches, and every creak of the metal felt like a heartbeat. When you're pulling a chassis, the metal has a memory. It wants to return to its crumpled state. To fight that, we had to go beyond just tensioning. We reached the point where the right side shock absorber base was simply too far gone to be salvaged. This is the most critical component of the front end. It holds the weight of the car and dictates the geometry of the steering. If this base is off by even a fraction of a degree, the car will dog track down the road, wearing out tires in a matter of miles. The solution was radical. We had to amputate. Using an angle grinder and a high-speed saw, we cut out the damaged shock absorber housing entirely. This revealed the complex, multi-layered construction of the BMW F80. Unlike older cars, these modern chassis are a jigsaw puzzle of high-strength steel and aluminum reinforcements. We spent hours drilling out factory spot welds, ensuring that the donor area was as clean as the day it left the factory in Regensburg. But how do you align a part when you don't have a $50,000 laser measurement system? You build one. We took a basic iron rod, some precision threaded screws, and created a manual leveling gauge. For just $40 in materials, we had a tool that could measure the exact distance between the left and right shock towers and cross-reference them with the rear subframe. We spent the afternoon measuring, pulling, and remeasuring. Close enough doesn't exist at 150 miles per hour. When the homemade gauge finally clicked into place perfectly, we knew the bones were straight. We clamped the new mount into place and began the plug weld process, mimicking the factory's robotic welds to ensure that once the paint was on, even a BMW inspector would have a hard time spotting the repair. While the exterior was a battlefield of sparks and steel, we decided the interior needed a complete personality shift. The F80 M3 has a fantastic interior, but it's often a bit dark, a bit too serious. We wanted to break that up with a touch of OEM plus high fashion. We stripped the interior down to the floorboards. The first move was the seat belts. The standard black belts were functional but boring. We unbolted the entire tensioning mechanism and sent the webbing to a specialist to be swapped for competition gold. It's a small detail, but when you open the door, those yellow streaks against the black leather scream custom. But we didn't stop there. We decided to take a page out of the Rolls-Royce playbook. While waiting for the mechanical parts to arrive, we dropped the entire roof liner. If you've never seen a Starlight headliner installation, it's a test of absolute patience. We poked over 500 individual fiber optic cables through the fabric, securing each one with adhesive before trimming them flush. When we finally wired it into the car's electrical system and dimmed the lights, the cabin was transformed. It wasn't just a track car anymore, it was a luxury sanctuary. It's a polarizing mod for a hardcore M car, but in the world of YouTube automation and viral builds, you need that wow factor that makes people stop scrolling.
With the pretty work done, it was time to face the nightmare every builder hates, the wiring harness. Modern BMWs aren't just cars, they're rolling computers. The accident had sliced through the main harness like a hot knife through butter. A new harness from the dealership would cost more than the car's remaining value, so we went the manual route. We sourced a donor harness and began the painstaking process of soldering. This isn't just about connecting wires, it's about maintaining resistance and signal integrity for the sensors. If a single solder joint is weak, the car might throw a limp mode code 6 months down the road. We worked wire by wire, headlight connectors, ground straps, camera sensors, and the horn. To keep it looking factory fresh, we avoided cheap electrical tape. Instead, we used German-made Tessa fabric tape, the exact same stuff BMW uses. But just as we thought we were in the clear, the car hit us with a setback. The brake lines, vital for, not dying, were crushed beyond repair. The dealership told us it was a 2-month wait for parts coming from Germany. In the world of content creation, 2 months is an eternity. We had to pivot. We sent a scout to a specialized yard in Atlanta to hunt down a pristine set of lines from a Donor 3 series. It was a race against time, but when that package arrived and the lines threaded perfectly into the ABS module, we knew the beast was finally becoming a car again. With the chassis straight and the interior glowing, we were finally staring into the eyes of the beast, the S55 engine. But there was a problem. The impact had shattered the plastic guide for the Valvetronic system, BMW's incredibly complex variable valve lift technology. To fix it, we had to dive into the engine's timing, a job that usually requires thousands of dollars in specialized BMW special tools to lock the camshafts in place. We didn't have the tools. We had a welder and a plan. In a move that would make a dealership technician faint, we took two 20mm wrenches and positioned them over the camshaft flats. To ensure they wouldn't move even a fraction of a millimeter, which would send the valve smashing into the pistons, we welded the two wrenches together, creating a custom locking bridge. It was a moment of pure tension. If our homemade jig slipped while we were replacing the broken plastic and the timing gears, the engine was dead. We held our breath, swapped the shattered components, and torqued the bolts to the exact Newton-meter specifications. With the new valve cover sealed, it was time for the moment of truth. We hooked up a fresh battery, primed the fuel pump, and hit the start button. The engine didn't just start, it roared. But it wasn't a smooth roar. It was hunting, stumbling, and coughing. Why? Because this car was a sleeper tuned for E85 ethanol gasoline, but we only had standard 93 octane in the tank. The ECU was fighting to understand why its high-octane fuel had been replaced with water. But as the sensors adjusted, the idle smoothed out into that signature raspy BMW metallic growl. We had brought it back from the dead. Just because the engine is running doesn't mean the car is healthy. We plugged in the diagnostic tool and were greeted with a Christmas tree of errors. Over 20 fault codes flashed on the screen. Most were ghost codes from the dead battery, but one kept us up at night, the timing correlation code. If our welded wrench trick was off by even a hair, the car would stay in limp mode forever. We cleared the codes and waited. One by one, the errors disappeared. The timing code? Gone. The only thing left was a minor exhaust manifold error, perfectly normal for a car with a high-flow, modified exhaust system. The beast was officially healthy. Now we had to make it look the part. The Yas Marina blue paint is legendary, but the new hood and bumper were still in raw primer. We took the car to the booth, but we hit yet another wall. The color code didn't match. Modern paint ages and fades, and factory blue looked too bright against the original doors. We had to perform a custom tint to match, adjusting the pigments until the transition between the new fender and the original door was invisible. We applied a heavy coat of clear, sanded it to a mirror finish, and watched as the M3 F80 finally regained its former glory. Even the insulation under the hood was applied with a brush to mimic the factory's messy but functional look. To the untrained eye, this car had never been in a wreck. As the sun set, we rolled the M3 out of the shop. This wasn't just a car anymore, it was a testament to what happens when you refuse to let a masterpiece die. The gold seatbelts caught the fading light, and the starlight headliner turned the cabin into a private galaxy. We clicked the gear lever into drive and felt the suspension, the same suspension that had been ripped from the chassis months ago, soak up the road with factory precision. The car felt tight, the steering was laser-focused, the S55 engine, with its SR performance upgrades and crank hub peace of mind, pulled like a freight train. But as we cruised, a thought remained in the back of our minds. We'd done the impossible with DIY tools and welded wrenches, but a high-performance machine like this is never truly finished. We're already planning to swap our emergency timing fix for a full, genuine BMW timing kit in the future, just to be 100% sure. We started with a pile of blue metal and shattered plastic. We ended with a supercar killer that stands out in any crowd. This M3 F80 didn't just get repaired, it got a second life. So, the question remains, would you take the risk on a salvage beast, or is the perfect factory car the only way to go? Let us know which M3 generation has your heart in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe. This was just the beginning.